First of all, as I say, I'm greatly honored that you've asked me to come and say a few words, and I'm grateful for this. We believe in the Department of Science and Technology and our public institutions. We are in a journey in a country where, because of the challenges we have at the moment, it is not obvious sometimes that we should invest in science, technology, and innovation. So we try and measure ourselves and ask ourselves a strategic question: to what extent in this journey have we succeeded in ensuring that science, technology, and innovation are at the center of helping to shape our national priorities as a country? And I'd just like to remind you and take you through a couple of things that perhaps have happened recently. So we're gauging how successful we have been by looking at how science, technology, and innovation has been mentioned by political principals. You would be aware that during the 2015 State of the Nation address, our president announced government's 9-point plan, which is aimed at reviving the South African economy. And Professor Mjwara talked about the importance of reindustrialization. This plan outlines a set of key priorities, one of which is science, technology, and innovation in driving the reindustrialization of South Africa. Then, in his address this year, the President announced that the Department of Science and Technology, amongst other things, will finalize the Sovereign Innovation Fund. Now, some of you may not be aware what is it that he was talking about, but it's a public-private partnership funding that is aimed at looking at how we can commercialize innovations that are from ideas from public and private sectors. This is one of my key indicators, MEC, this year, to see whether we can get this Sovereign Innovation Fund going. The President also mentioned Kitlapila, the attempt by this government to establish a state-owned company in the pharmaceutical industry to help in the supply of the ARV drugs to the Department of Health, as we hope in 2016-2017 financial year will be able to do this. So it is therefore no exaggeration to say that not only are these two important announcements by the President a clear indication that our efforts to place science, technology, and innovation at the center of our nation's development are beginning to show some fruit. But we think that we are at the beginning of this curve. There's still a long way to go, and you would know that in the National Development Plan, amongst other things, it challenges us that by 2030 we need to produce approximately 100 PhDs per million per year of our population. This translates to producing 5,000 PhD graduates per year as compared to the current 1,400. So in a sense, increasing this by a factor of 5 as we proceed. Now, we can't do that in our view unless we have an excellent research capacity. And therefore, we see this Research SACHI initiative as a very important contributor in then developing that research capacity. And as you have said, we think that we do need to make sure that as we increase this research and innovation capacity, we also have to make sure that we transform as we go along. And one of the things, Mr. Vice Chancellor and the membership of the ELG, that we are trying to do now with the NRF is not only to put the NRF to scrutiny in terms of the progress we are making in transformation, but we would like to work with the institutions to find out what are the institutional policies that are being put in place to try and assist in this regard. Because most of you would know that whilst we are celebrating these 42 SACHI chairs, we would have liked that these SACHI chairs would have come not because we had ring-fenced the call to just women. We would have liked that this process should happen as a natural process. So we still have to spend a bit more time to drive the transformation as a natural process rather than as a process that is directed by the department or by the NRF. So we will be working with yourselves as the universities and the institutions in this regard. So we hope that the universities will help us in trying to then develop this research capacity. But secondly, to ensure that the knowledge that is developed is translated into useful products and services where it makes sense. I am aware that a lot of universities and researchers have not been happy with the DST in its approach to make sure that whilst we produce knowledge, but we also put mechanisms in place to ensure that knowledge is translated into useful products and services. We think that it's still the right balance, and we think that we have to continue in the journey of making sure that that knowledge finds its place to the society, to the private sector, and the community at large. Because we believe that if we didn't do that, and the value of this knowledge in solving our problems, we probably would not be at the stage where we're at, where there is now a target of 1.5% of GDP that must be invested in R&D. And then the third point, perhaps before I conclude, is that we, unfortunately, in South Africa do not have an engaged public. And I do know that the universities insist that professors must teach, and they insist that professors must do research. And I suspect, Professor Rensbeck, you also insist that there must be a community outreach. Now, one of the things that I would hope the newly research chairs that we are celebrating tonight will work with us in that dimension of the university's missions. In particular, around making sure that the research that you do find itself in conversation with the society about the importance of science, technology, and innovation. This is one of the areas that, again, we are going to increase in focus. And in fact, in my other role here at the UJ, I will be approaching the Vice-Chancellor to see whether we can have some kind of a public engagement on key topics. And one of the ideas we are having is that if some research chairs and centers of excellence, for instance, that are working on food security or that are doing research on racism, can we have a public engagement on this from the research perspective? So I hope that you will, as you do research and as you train students, work with us in making sure that we engage the public. And in conclusion then, I'd like to congratulate yourselves. I suspect I did meet with you when the launch was made in Cape Town at the Center for the Book, but it's also nice for me to say congratulations. As you have heard from my few remarks, there is a big challenge lying ahead, but I like to be in an environment where there are challenges. And then I am aware, Mr. Vice-Chancellor, that in my role in this university, as a council member, I would also like to congratulate you because we know the huge targets that we have set for you in this big journey that the university has set out in for being an internationally recognized university. And I think that this initiative helps us to get closer to that target. Thank you very much.